When I turned 18, I came down with a strange illness that nearly killed me. An old Taoist priest cured me. When my grandma offered him money, he refused and pointed at me, saying, "I don't want anything, just have her give me a child." My grandma was old, her eyesight failing and her hearing worse. She was stunned at first, unsure if she heard right, so she asked tentatively, "What do you mean, kind sir? You want my granddaughter to marry you?" The old Taoist replied, "Marriage doesn't matter. Just let her sleep with me for a few nights and give me a child. That'll be your family's way of saying thanks." This time, Grandma heard him loud and clear. Her chest heaved with rage. "Pah!" She spat, then cursed. "You old bastard hunched over. With your crooked back, you don't look much younger than me. And you want to marry my precious granddaughter? You've got some nerve." The old Taoist snorted and gave a sinister grin. "I saved her, so she owes me. If not, I've got ways to make your whole family pay." Not only was he shameless, he was downright malicious. Just then, voices rose outside. It was the village hunters returning from a wolf hunt. My grandma regained her nerve, grabbed a broom, and charged at him. "You reincarnated mutt! Get the hell out of my house! Out!" The old Taoist started to the doorway, turned back, and growled, "You'll regret this one day." My grandma spat twice in the direction he vanished and cursed under her breath. Not long after he left, my dad returned, rifle slung over his shoulder, covered in dust and snow. As soon as he stepped into the courtyard, he sniffed the air hard. "Mom, who was just here?" "Don't even ask," Grandma said. A weird Taoist showed up dressed oddly and spoke even stranger. But his herbs worked Kristen's better now. Dad was relieved at first, but then sniffed again, frowning. "Mom, there's a strong wolf stench in the yard." "I don't think that was a priest. I think it was a wolf." Wolves had been attacking the village lately. Dad had set traps and killed the alpha, scattering the pack. The remaining wolves were quickly hunted down, all but one, an enormous old wolf that was clever, elusive, and vicious. Dad had been dealing with wolves daily and knew their scent well, but Grandma and I had never encountered one, so we didn't recognize the smell. We leaned in to sniff carefully, still couldn't smell anything. "How could it be a wolf?" Grandma said. "It had clothes and a hat, and it talked. The robes were tattered, sure, but definitely a Taoist outfit." Dad glanced at the door, lowering his voice. "Mom, that wolf might be able to mimic human speech. Yesterday, during a heavy snowfall in the mountains, I heard the village chief calling for help. I followed the voice to a cliff, but no one was there. A loose rock nearly sent me over the edge. I checked the snow around the cliff, no human footprints, only wolf tracks. From now on, be careful what we say. It might be able to copy our voices." I'd heard of wolves mimicking women's cries to lure hunters, but never speaking human words. I couldn't believe it. Grandma's eyes widened in shock. If a wolf can really speak like a person, then it's turning into a demon. Dad whistled for our hunting dogs, Buddy and Coco. They sniffed all over the courtyard. "Did either of you get a good look at that Taoist's face?" Dad asked again. "Didn't notice his face," Grandma said, rubbing her bad eyes. "He wore a thick cotton cloak, a felt hat, a scarf, and even sunglasses. I'd only seen his figure from afar, the lighting was dim. He was hunched, messy, his clothes all ill-fitting like they were scavenged. But I did catch a glimpse of the hand hidden in his sleeve." Dad pondered for a moment. The sunglasses and scarf might have been to hide his face, but Kristen saw his hand. "That's strange. You two stay inside. Don't go anywhere. Lock the doors." "I'm going to check it out." He grabbed a flashlight, called the dogs, and rushed off. The snow had just stopped the day before, but it started falling again at night, covering the ground with icy grains. That night was bone-chilling cold. I hadn't eaten much for days, didn't even have the strength to lift a bowl. Grandma cooked millet porridge with salty pork bones and fed it to me spoon by spoon until I finished a whole bowl. Just as we finished eating, Dad returned, pale as a sheet. He tossed a pile of tattered clothes on the floor. There were faint bloodstains under the light. "Mom, Kristen, see if this was what that Taoist was wearing earlier." I tried to get up, but Grandma held me down. "Kristen, you're just getting better. Don't go near that filth." "That was close enough, I'll take a look." Her hands trembled as she picked up the clothes. A torn Taoist robe, a scarf, a thick cloak. But when she lifted the cloak, she flung it away like it was on fire. "That's it. That's the one. The tears are identical." The wet patches were frozen stiff. I thought it was snowmelt, but it's all blood. Dad helped her sit down. Grandma clutched his sleeve tightly, her voice anxious. "Where'd you find the clothes? What about the Taoist?" "Coco found them in the woods outside the village." That priest was invited by the villagers, supposedly an expert in wolf hunting. He was supposed to arrive these days. We even planned to greet him. Looks like something bad happened. As he spoke, Buddy ran in and dropped a severed hand on the floor, barking twice. "This was found with the clothes. The hand you saw today, that must have been this one. That beast is crafty stuffed, a human hand in its sleeve to pretend it was his own. Look, Wolf, claw marks all over the stump. The claws dug right into the flesh. You can even see the bone." Grandma let out a sharp gasp, her face going pale. "I forgot to mention earlier, that thing said it wanted to marry Kristen, wanted her to have its baby. I drove it out, and it said it would eat our whole family. I thought it was weird at the time. This isn't a famine year. Who still talks about cannibalism?" Dad sneered. "Marry? That thing didn't want a bride, it wanted meat. It set its eyes on Kristen and even wanted to taste baby flesh. That's why it cured her, to fatten her up. That beast dares target my family. I'll skin it alive." Just then, there was a loud bang at the gate. Buddy and Coco dashed out, barking in unison. Dad reached for his knife and shouted, "Who's there?" The wind howled, snow swirling in the air, carrying a voice. "Uncle Tony, it's me, Carlos. My dad wants you to bring Buddy and Coco. They think they've found the Taoist's body." It was Carlos, the village chief's son. "You go ahead, I'll come after I eat," Dad shouted back. There was a reply, followed by the crunch of footsteps in the snow. Dad glanced outside. "Did either of you think Carlos's voice sounded off? Like him, but not quite?" Grandma said, "It did sound strange, but maybe it was the wind. Wind could scatter sound and distort it, so I agreed it still sounded like Carlos to me." Dad wolfed down a big steamed bun, stuffed a chopstick's worth of cured meat into his mouth, and gulped down a bowl of millet porridge. Suddenly, I remembered something important. "Dad, I'm feeling a lot better. When you get a chance, call my second uncle and let my mom know so she doesn't rush back and worry," I said quietly. My illness had dragged on with no sign of getting better. I was close to dying. My mom was panicking. She'd heard that a traveling doctor had arrived in my second uncle's village who could treat strange diseases, so she rushed off to find him. "Kristen's right," Grandma said. "Now the wolves are around. When you head out later, call her uncle and tell Kristen's mom not to come back alone. Wait until you go get her." My second uncle had been disabled in a work accident years ago. His legs didn't work well, so to pass the time, he'd had a phone installed at home. Pretty convenient. Dad nodded. "I'll stop by the village chief's place first. This wolf can talk like a human, and even disguise itself. We've got to warn everyone to be careful. After that, I'll swing by the shop and call Kristen's uncle." Just then, the lights went out. Well, that's odd, power's out this early. Grandma muttered as she lit a candle and brought it over with a cover on. In our village, winter electricity came from coal-burning generators. Normally, the power would cut out briefly late at night to save energy, but going out this early was rare. Maybe the snow got too heavy and snapped a power line. I still need to go with the electrician to check the wires. You two get some rest. Don't wait up, Dad said as he pulled on his padded coat, put on his fox fur hat, tucked a small flask of sorghum liquor inside his shirt, grabbed his snow cloak at the door, slung his rifle over his back, called Buddy and Coco, and headed out. But he wasn't gone long before he came back and locked the main gate behind him, his face grim. Grandma rushed to ask what happened. Dad shut the inner door and whispered, out of breath, "I just realized I never told anyone about the Taoist's clothes. The moment I mentioned the Taoist might be dead, Carlos said they found his body. That's way too suspicious. So I used my flashlight to check the snow outside. I brushed off the top layer and saw nothing but wolf tracks. That wasn't Carlos at the door, it was a wolf. The bastard's crafty. It was using its tail to sweep away prints as it walked. Lucky for us, it missed a few spots. Grandma's eyes reddened. That son of a bitch has his eyes on our family? People say bears are scary, but they don't realize the most terrifying creature is the wolf. Wolves have the cunning of a fox, the ferocity of a tiger, the brutality of a bear, and the ability to mimic. But most importantly, they hold grudges. They're relentless and have incredible endurance. When I was little, Grandpa told me wolves could trail a flock of sheep for 20 kilometers. They're tactical masters of diversion, formation, strategy. Calm, rational, and patient, they wait for the perfect moment to strike. When a wolf moves, it rarely fails. I was deeply uneasy. "Dad, what if we just leave?" I blurted. "Move to the city." Dad patted my head. "Sweetheart, when a wolf targets you, running doesn't help. It'll do anything to stop us from escaping. And look, it's winter, heavy snow. No cars can come in, and we can't get out either. The best we could do is a donkey cart, but that wouldn't get us over the mountains in a day. If the wolf ambushed us on the road, we'd be done for." Maybe he saw the fear on my face, because Dad smiled and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, I'm the best hunter in the village. That thing won't get to us, I'll kill it first." Dressed and ready, he turned back at the door, signaling with his hand. "Coco stays here with you two. I'll take Buddy. Lock the door from the inside. I'll knock 3 times when I'm back. 2 short, 1 long. Check the peephole before you open." Our main gate was a double iron door. The right side had a small hidden peephole near the top with a lock, meant for checking outside. The village was usually peaceful, so during the day we left the big doors open, rarely using the small one. I'd nearly forgotten it was there. After seeing Dad off, Grandma bolted the gate, turned on her flashlight, and walked the yard with Coco, checking every corner. Then she fetched some charcoal from the woodshed and added it to the brazier inside, warming the room. As she busied herself, Coco followed her closely, tail wagging, looking every bit the loyal little bodyguard. Just then, the village loudspeaker crackled to life. It was Dad's voice. He'd made it to the village chief's house. He told everyone about the wolf pretending to be a Taoist, mimicking the village chief and Carlos. He warned folks to guard their children and elders, and not to open the door just because they heard a familiar voice verify before letting anyone in. But maybe the story sounded too outrageous. Some folks took it as a joke. Larry, our neighbor, didn't get along with Dad. As soon as the snow stopped, he called a couple of young hunters over. They lit a fire in his yard, grilled meat, drank booze. After hearing the broadcast, Larry slapped his thigh and laughed loudly on purpose. "What nonsense!" Wolves crying, knocking on doors. Sure, I can buy that. But wolves talking? That's a new one. Someone chimed in. They're making it sound like the wolf's become a demon or something. What's the agenda here? One guy, a bit more cautious, said, "But what if it's true?" Larry hollered, "Afraid of what? We haven't done anything wrong. No wolf's gonna come knocking on our door. We didn't kill the Wolf King. It'll go after the ones who did." Another joked. Exactly. We didn't kill the alpha wolf, and we don't have daughters for it to drool over. What are we worried about? Someone else said, I heard his daughter was sick, and the wolf cured her. Since when do wolves practice medicine? Sounds like total BS, the cautious guy replied. But I heard from the village elders old wolves know herbs. They can tell which ones cure what. Might not be nonsense after all. That Kristen girl's not bad looking. Now that she's cured, she'd make a fine wife, someone said, smacking his lips. Larry chuckled. You've got good taste. Kristen's a sweet one. Bet she smells great. Marry her, and the kid's bound to be beautiful and smart. Grandma had heard enough. She picked up a big basin of slop and dumped it over the wall. Ow! Came a chorus of cries. Rolling her eyes, she shouted, Oops, slipped! That feisty old lady never let anyone talk trash about her family. It was satisfying and kind of funny, but I couldn't laugh. Suddenly, I understood why the wolf wanted me to bear its child, why it wanted to eat me. It must have overheard Larry and those hunters joking about me. Wolves don't understand that when people talk about someone smelling good, it's not always about food, so it probably thought I must taste amazing. And hearing that any child I had would be beautiful and smart, it wanted both. Wolves are greedy by nature. They want it all. This one's clever, sure, but not quite as clever as a human. That means we still had a chance to beat it. Grandma didn't want Coco to freeze outside, so she called him in. Then she took the cured meats from under the eaves and brought them inside, placing them carefully. She sat on the bed, kicked off her shoes, and said, Kristen, until that wolf's caught, we're not sleeping in our pajamas. Stay alert at night. Wolves aren't like other animals, they hold grudges. Since it made a threat, it's bound to act. Grandma, where do you think it'll strike? I asked. She shook her head. Don't know. Let's hope to God your dad kills it tonight. Once an animal tastes human flesh, it gets addicted. You can't let it live. But I thought Dad went to help the electrician. Grandma smiled, leaned close, and whispered in my ear. That was for the wolf's benefit. Like we need your dad to check wires? Wolves have better hearing than dogs. Your grandpa told me once, if a wolf wants to listen, it can hear everything within a 10-mile radius. If it's paying attention, it can probably hear everything we're saying in this room. So the power outage was part of the plan? I nodded excitedly. Grandma yawned. Sleep now. Who knows what the second half of the night will bring you, might not get any rest later. I closed my eyes in peace. But just as I did, there came a knock at the door. It was rhythmic, but not the too short, one long signal. Grandma and I jolted upright, exchanged a wary glance, and were about to check it out only to realize the knocking was coming from next door, at Larry's house. The night was quiet. I heard Larry staggering over the snow, drunk, and yelling out, asking who it was. Someone outside said something in a low voice. I couldn't make it out, but it sounded like one of the hunters who'd been drinking with him earlier. But wasn't that guy still staying at Larry's? The door opened, and then came a loud crack, followed by Larry's blood-curdling scream. A wolf! There's a wolf! Help me! Hell! His screams filled the courtyard, rising like a wave. Our homes were only separated by a wall. The sound was terrifyingly clear. Ah, it hurts. My stomach. Ah. The screams were so intense, I couldn't even tell who they belonged to. The scent of blood seeped into the air and right into my nostrils. The screams weakened, one after another, until everything fell silent. All that remained was the sound of a beast panting, tearing into flesh, crunching bones. In the dead of night, it was chillingly vivid. Coco shrank into the corner of the bed, trembling all over, completely silent. Grandma crept out of bed and started piling tables and chairs behind the door. I couldn't tell if she was shivering from cold or fear her body felt ice cold. Even so, she held me tight. The fear of carnivores is something embedded in our bones. I kept telling myself I was safe, but my body shook uncontrollably. I couldn't help but want to cry, but Grandma clamped her hand over my mouth. Soon after, rapid gunfire erupted like firecrackers. Bullets flew into our yard and Larry's. Grandma and I wanted to tell Dad that the wolf was in Larry's courtyard, but there was no chance. The gunfire was too scattered, and by the time dawn broke, the wolf had vanished. In Larry's house and yard, only 3 or 4 torn up, bloody bodies remained. That night, Dad had buried over a dozen steel wolf traps beneath the snow outside our gate. If the wolf came knocking, it would have been caught for sure. A few gunshots after the howl would have finished it off. To prevent villagers from accidentally triggering the traps, they'd cut the power and use the loudspeaker to warn everyone to stay inside and lock up. A few hunters had staked out 500 or 600 meters away any closer, and the wolf might have smelled them and stayed away. But Larry had to be difficult. He called a few guys over to drink and party at his place. They got drunk and crashed there. When someone knocked, Larry, still half drunk, didn't even remember someone was supposed to already be sleeping in his house. The hunters sprinted the moment they heard Larry scream, but the heavy clothing and thick snow slowed them. It took 5 or 6 minutes to get there. Maybe Larry's cries were too desperate, or maybe they were just too panicked, but none of them could tell which yard the screams were coming from. Dad was so worried he lost his cool. Instinctively, he fired a whole round into our own courtyard. The other hunters followed suit, and that's how things ended up like this. The weird part is, Dad muttered while collecting the traps, why'd the wolf go knock on Larry's door instead of ours? Makes no sense. Could that beast have figured out I set traps outside? That thing was even bigger than last time, the village chief said, puking up bile from all the gore. Kristen's dad. Ask around, see if any nearby villages have skilled wolf hunters. No matter the cost, we'll hire them. Dad nodded, worn out, and quietly finished gathering the traps before returning home. I could feel his frustration. Grandma tried to comfort him. Tony, maybe we should go stay with Kristen's second uncle for a few days, just lie low. Dad let out a long sigh, his bloodshot eyes closing as he nodded. He went to call my uncle while Grandma and I started packing. My uncle's house was only 4 or 5 miles away. With a donkey cart, it'd take half a day. We were halfway through packing when Dad came back, looking even more grim. Her uncle said Kristen's mom didn't wait for me to pick her up, she already left. I have to go find her. Dad slung his rifle over his shoulder, called for Buddy, and rushed off. Dad, weren't we going to stay at Uncle's for a while? I asked, clutching my bundle. Dad stopped at the door. Your uncle's worried we'll bring the wolf with us. He doesn't want us at his place. Lock the door tight. Don't open it during the day unless you absolutely have to, and even then, make sure you see the person's face clearly before you do. Grandma rubbed her eyes, pretending to be tough. Don't worry. The two of us can manage just fine. We've still got Coco. You go find Kristen's mom. Dad nodded and started walking again, but then turned back and looked at me. If I don't find your mom and she comes back on her own, don't let her go back out. Keep her here. He hesitated, his eyes reddening. And sweetheart, if your mom knocks, don't just look at her clothes. I knew exactly what he meant. I nodded silently. My tears fell in a sudden rush. Grandma hugged me. Good people are blessed. Your mom has a kind heart. She'll be fine. But by afternoon, neither of them had returned. We finished dinner, and still, no sign of them. Winter nights fall early. Because of the wolf, the whole village shut its doors after dark. The streets were empty. The longer I waited, the more anxious I became until worry turned to despair. By 8 or 9 o'clock, Grandma couldn't keep her eyes open anymore and started nodding off. She'd been exhausted from taking care of me these past few days. But I couldn't sleep. I was too worried about Mom and Dad. Around midnight, just as I was drifting off, I thought I heard my mom's voice. I jolted awake. I listened closely. There was knocking, and my mom's voice alongside it. My heart leapt. I threw on my coat and ran out, forgetting my flashlight. The snow had stopped at some point, and the moonlight in the second half of the night was bright, so bright it lit up the yard like silver. I called out, "Mom!" excitedly while opening the small door to peek outside. Outside the door, in the moonlight, my mom stood shivering with a scarf wrapped around her head, dressed in her usual padded coat, hands tucked in her sleeves, trembling from the cold. She kept urging me to open the door. "Kristen, hurry and open up. I'm freezing to death. I fell into a snow pit on the way and only just climbed out. It was already dark." "Your dad didn't even come pick me up." It was my mom's voice, but maybe because of the cold, her enunciation wasn't quite right, and her accent sounded a little off. "But Dad went out to get you. You didn't run into him?" I said as I reached to pull the iron latch behind the main door, only to feel Coco clutching my pant leg tightly, shaking all over, backing away. That's when my dad's warning flashed through my mind, and I suddenly sobered up, freezing mid-motion. I peered once more through the peephole. My mom's shadow on the snow seemed off. There was something extra, long and strange. I couldn't quite make it out. My heart started pounding uncontrollably. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and said to the person outside, "There have been wolves around lately. How do I know you're really my mom?" My mom scoffed. "You little brat. Who else would I be if not your mom? Don't believe me? I'll show you my face." I heard a rustling sound outside, then saw her face appear in front of the peephole. Just one look and I slammed my hand over my mouth, tears bursting out as I trembled violently. It was my mom's face, but her eyes were bleeding. Frozen trails of blood hung from her cheeks like icicles. Her eyes were wide and bloodshot, her skin coated in frost. Crying, I slammed the peephole door shut. My legs gave out and I collapsed against the door. "Kristen, open the door. I'm your mother. Open up. You can't just leave me out here. You ungrateful girl. I'll let the wolves eat you," she screamed, pounding at the door. The voice was hers, but not quite. Twisted, menacing, and unfamiliar. It sounded like a beast from hell, full of blood and stench. The door shook violently, once, twice, 3 times, but I was still weak from illness and the shock had paralyzed my legs. Coco barked fearfully, then turned to grab my clothes, trying to drag me toward the inner room. Grandma had woken up from the noise and came running, half lifting, half dragging me away. Just as we reached the hallway, there was a loud crash from the western mud wall. A huge section had caved in, revealing a gaping hole. On the other side was Larry's yard. All our other walls were sturdy red brick, except for this one, an old-fashioned mud wall that bordered Larry's house. Larry was lazy and his yard was fenced with low mud walls, easy for wolves to dig through. The wolf had clearly chosen his place long ago, using it as a backup entry point into our yard. That day, it sensed my dad's setup, bypassed the traps, and attacked Larry's place instead. Not only did it feast, it opened a second route into our home. This wolf was smarter than we'd imagined. This wasn't a normal wolf, it was a demon in disguise. My blood froze in my veins, my hair standing on end. With a thud, a large black figure the size of a grown man leapt over the broken wall, landing on all fours. It wore my mother's clothes. Its green eyes gleamed with hunger and malice, its fangs bared. Using my mom's voice, it called out, "Kristen! Kristen! Why won't you open the door?" It was the wolf. It had broken through the mud wall and entered our yard. Coco lunged at it, barking madly, biting and clawing. Grandma and I took the chance to rush into the main room, slamming the door shut behind us. Trembling, we pushed tables and cabinets to barricade it. I tried to check on Coco through the window, but Grandma yanked me back and shut the curtain. In the darkness, Grandma sighed. "Don't look. Coco won't survive this. That wolf's too big." And she was right. It was easily twice Coco's size. As soon as she finished speaking, Coco let out a heartbreaking whimper. Then we heard bones tearing, flesh being chewed. My tears fell uncontrollably. Grandma held me tight, her whole body trembling. Soon, the monstrous wolf's shadow was cast on the curtain, its mouth dripping blood. It slammed into the window with a crash. Glass shattered. Its head forced its way in, white fangs gnashing at the curtain. "Kristen! Kristen, come out!" it cried, mimicking my mom's tone, pitiful and eerie. But its eyes gleamed with a cold, murderous light. Grandma and I backed away toward the rear wall. My legs were shaking. Tears streamed down my face. Instinctively, I groped for a stool and gripped it tightly, ready to use it as a weapon. Grandma clutched her sewing scissors, voice shaking so badly she could hardly speak. "Child, if the wolf breaks in, don't worry about me. Run. Head for the front gate. I heard wolves don't eat again if they're full. If it eats me, it might not eat you. Don't be afraid." I bit down hard on my lower lip, choking back my sobs. "Grandma, you run first. You've taken care of me all these years. I haven't repaid you. Let me take your place this time." "You stubborn child," she said anxiously. We were arguing when suddenly gunshots rang out. It was Dad. He was back. The wolf let out a yelp. It had been hit in the leg. It stopped attacking, then darted through the broken wall and disappeared. Grandma and I collapsed to the floor, sobbing and hugging each other. I'd braced myself for this, but that moment when I almost opened the door broke me. Dad returned, holding Mom's head in her clothes. His eyes were bloodshot. Beside him lay his padded coat, inside of which were the remains of my mom's limbs, gathered over the long night. One leg had been gnawed to the bone. I searched everywhere on the road, home, nothing. In the end, Buddy followed the scent back to your second uncle's house. Dad's voice broke. It took him over 10 seconds to calm down enough to speak again. "That thing answered the phone this morning. Your uncle and mom were already dead eaten by that beast. Their bodies were frozen solid. Barely any meat left. Only the head remained. No wonder I couldn't find its den in the mountains. It had followed your mom to your uncle's place, killed them both, and made that house its lair. It pretended to be your uncle and answered the phone. I should have known. I should have realized it wasn't him. It was the wolf. 4 or 5 miles might be a long way for a person, but not for a wolf. Every time it killed someone in our village, it would return to rest at my uncle's house. Gotta admit, that thing was cunning. For a hunter, there's no worse humiliation than having a loved one slaughtered, devoured, and then being the one to clean up the remains. In just one night, Dad's black hair turned completely white. My tears never stopped. Even when I did fall asleep, I woke up crying. Grandma took out the coffin she'd prepared for herself and used it to bury Mom's remains. Coco's body was torn to pieces, its insides completely hollowed out. Grandma and I placed what was left in a wooden box and buried it beneath the phoenix tree in the yard. By morning, Dad collapsed with a high fever. He'd spent too long in the snow yesterday. Both his feet were frostbitten, and his right shin was severely damaged. The village doctor said it might need amputation. but he'd try to save it. Buddy's 4 legs were frostbitten too. He lay beside Dad, barely hanging on. The village chief came by, sighing. That wolf's too dangerous. Everyone who can flee to relatives has already left. If you have somewhere to go, you should too. Carlos and I will take you, but aside from my second uncle, we had no other relatives in the mountains. After the chief left, Grandma said to me, "Kristen, I have a sworn sister. I'll entrust you to her." "Grandma, I'm not going anywhere. That wolf's after our family. If I leave, I'll only bring disaster to someone else. It ate my mom and my uncle, and Dad's leg is ruined because of it. We can't let this go." I clutched her hand, sobbing. Grandma's eyes turned red. "All right, I'll fight that beast with you." We brought in some cured meat and sausages from under the eaves, sprinkled them with rat poison, and roasted them over the brazier. As the oil sizzled, we kept adding poison until it fully soaked into the meat. Cured meat and sausages are savory and salty. Roasting them only intensifies the aroma. No animal can resist the smell of roasted meat. And the poison, colorless, tasteless, 300 times more toxic than arsenic, could kill 10 cows with a single bottle, let alone one wolf. Dad had once used cured meat on the traps, but the wolf was too cautious to take the bait, though it had drooled all over. But what if we placed the poisoned meat somewhere else? By dusk, the village chief and Carlos came to our house and set traps all around front and back, inside and outside the walls. They said they couldn't just abandon Dad. After sending Carlos's mom to her family's place, they returned to stay nearby at Larry's house to keep watch. We hung the poisoned meat back under the eaves, just in case. Then we brought out a sheep, placing hay and grain mixed with poison in front of it, letting it eat slowly. If the wolf came early, it would eat the live sheep and be poisoned. If it came late and the sheep was already dead, it wouldn't matter. Wolves eat carrion too. Even the village chief felt it was foolproof. As night fell, the only sounds were occasional branches snapping under snow. The village felt empty. But we waited and waited until midnight, and still the wolf hadn't come. The sheep had already died, foaming at the mouth and freezing stiff in the snow. Dad was still unconscious. I held him up while Grandma pried open his mouth to feed him some medicine. While placing a cold towel on his forehead, Grandma muttered, "He shot it yesterday? Maybe it's afraid to come back? Or maybe the shot hit something vital and it's already dead?" I shook my head. It wouldn't die that easily. Even if it didn't come tonight, it would come tomorrow. By the second half of the night, Grandma had fallen asleep at Dad's bedside. I watched the yard through the window, my eyelids drooping. Half awake, I heard the door creak like Grandma had gone out. In the moonlight, I saw a figure in the yard heading toward the woodshed. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe the coal had run out and Grandma had gone to fetch more. But several minutes passed and she hadn't come back. Drowsy but worried, I stepped outside to look. The moon was thin and dim, making everything look fuzzy and indistinct. I saw Grandma wearing her headscarf, squatting at the coal pile in a strange posture. "Grandma, didn't you bring in a bunch of coal before bed? Why are you still out here? Come inside, the wolf could show up any minute." "Kristen, who are you talking to?" Grandma called from inside the house. Her voice came from inside. Then who was out here? The grandma at the coal pile turned her head and grinned at me with an unnaturally long snout. "The wolf is here." I turned and ran. That stench chased me, and I threw myself toward the house, grabbed a string of poisoned sausage, and shoved it straight into the wolf's gaping mouth. It instinctively swallowed, but being clever, it immediately vomited everything back up. The village chief and Carlos heard the commotion and fired their rifles at the wolf. But visibility was low, and they were afraid of hitting me. Most of the bullets hit the snow. The wolf spun around and leapt at them. It slashed the village chief, who screamed in agony. Carlos wrestled with it, but after a few blows, the wolf tore a huge chunk of flesh from him, and he passed out from the pain. I hurled the poisoned meat at the wolf. It didn't even glance at it. It clearly preferred warm blood and fresh flesh over meat. I panicked and grabbed the iron rake from under the eaves to help. But Grandma opened the door, yanked me back inside, and shoved me in. With a sharp click, she locked the door from outside. I screamed, "Grandma!" in panic. "Kristen! My good girl, live on." That little old lady gripped the iron rake and walked step by step toward the wolf. The beast had pinned the village chief to the ground, baring its fangs at his neck. Grandma struck it hard with the rake. It yelped, baring its bloody teeth, and limped toward her. The wolf knocked her down with one swipe, ripping open her belly. Cotton stuffing flew everywhere. I couldn't open the door. I ran to the window, pounding on it, screaming through my tears. The day before, when the window was broken, Grandma had called a blacksmith to weld steel bars over it to keep the wolf out. Back then, I felt reassured by those bars. Now, I hated them. I found a hammer and swung it at them, but even after several strikes, they were only slightly bent, not nearly enough to break. I watched, helpless, as the wolf devoured Grandma's insides. Her screams grew weaker and weaker until they faded completely. The courtyard reeked of blood and the beast's stench. My face soaked with tears and sweat, I gripped the twisted bars, crying until I couldn't make a sound. By the time Grandma fell completely silent, a pale light appeared on the horizon. The wolf, full, glanced back at me with savage pride, then leapt toward the wall, but halfway up it fell. With a heavy thud, it collapsed to the ground, foaming at the mouth, twitching violently, voiding its bowels. In less than a minute, it went still, legs splayed. I turned to look at the corner of the room. The 2 bottles of rat poison we had left, now empty, lay on the ground. My mouth fell open. I cried silently. Of course. Why didn't I think of it sooner? The wolf preferred live prey. As long as it could eat people, it would never touch dead meat or sheep. My grandma was the smartest person in the world, the bravest person. She traded her horrible death for my safety. A month later, spring came. Dad woke up. After a long battle, he pulled through, though he lost his leg. Buddy didn't make it. He passed before spring. I buried him beside Coco so they could be together. Before heading off to college, I gave the house and our land to the village chief's family as compensation. Then, I loaded my mother and Grandma's ashes onto a donkey cart, helped Dad up, and we moved to the city. We never went back to that village again.